Special thanks to our headlining sponsors, ExteNet, Zinwave, and Solid.
We have a really super panel here with Scott Willis from Zenwave, excuse me. I got all the pictures here and I'm close, but
we haven't bought them yet.
Here's what I'm going to do to save myself a lot of embarrassment. I'm going to let each of you introduce yourself briefly, and then I'll pull up the slides. How about that?
Perfect.
So Scott, why don't you start?
Okay, so Jeff, thank you. I'm Scott Willis with Zenwave.
Are we on?
Are we on? We not on? Can you hear me?
Now we are. Okay.
Now we're on. Okay, great. I'm Scott Willis with Zenwave, and I'm the CEO. And certainly, Jeff, thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to come up and have a chance to talk.
Hey, I'm Bill DelGrego with ExteNet Systems and the Vice President for all enterprise solutions nationally.
Dennis Rigney with Solid, Vice President for the U.S.
Donna Kruse, I'm in headquarters network implementation with Verizon Wireless, and my team manages the top 3,000 enterprises for in-building systems nationwide.
Donnie joined us. It was a last-minute addition. We're super happy to have Donnie here to give perspective on how carriers are servicing their enterprise customers with in-building wireless technology. So without further ado, I'm gonna allow ExteNet to maybe talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and I know we've got a bit of the story, but why don't we go, I've got your slide presentation up, so
really,
if you want to speak to these couple slides, that'd be great.
Look, I think from Ron's presentation, you probably know who ExteNet is, but let me just talk about it this way, that our responsibility, the way we look at it, is to now be in the consultative selling mode. The old days of just taking a service or a product and going to a real estate owner or to the carriers and selling something is over. The converged communications that's going on in the world is meaning that each real estate owner has their own pain points, their own issues they need to solve, and you heard it from the two chief engineers that were up here from the beginning. They have their own reasons for doing what they need. Compliance is what I heard about in one of the buildings. So we have to listen as a company now, and we have to say, what is it that you're trying to solve? We have to help them understand what's currently available, and then we have to say, what can we do that's going to help you get to the next step, or to stay ahead, at least, we kind of call it there's no such thing as a guarantee of future upgrades, but it's future-proofing kind of thing. And that neutral host backbone that we've been talking about, that fiber, pipe that's out there, that's obviously a critical piece of this, so that you can do what you need to do depending on what the pain points and what the services or needs of that customer are. So I deal primarily with the indoor space, which means that I'm dealing with the enterprise customers. So I'm Donnie's best friend and I'm his enemy, right? Because we go lock up a building, as you know, and that he didn't want us to lock up, and we totally get that, because we want to try to provide a neutral solution in some form or fashion. And yet Verizon wanted to solve a problem for an enterprise client out there. Maybe a single enterprise that's got 300,000 square feet, and they're very Verizon focused, and they want to do that. And so we're in parallel efforts to try to solve a problem for an enterprise customer. And so we want to do it in a way that's now a very big focus on the economics of it. And they're not easy. And so you'll hear as we talk, I'm sure, we've got to come up with ways to educate the real estate owners on what can be with the dollars that a carrier has, or the dollars that we share with a carrier, or real estate owner has to pay for all of it. So that's the challenge, and that's why I say it's a very much a consultative sale. It's an education process to say, hey, what can you do, and what's the pain point you need to solve, and how do we help you with the economics as we move forward.
Thank you. So Scott, maybe give the short commercial on Zenwave and how you fit into this ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the last, let me start with this. So the last couple of panels and up until this point, the discussion's really been about the fiber infrastructure, the fiber plant, and enabling a building to provide the services that are required. So the next stage of that evolution is enabling mobile or wireless connectivity, because that's where business and enterprise is evolving to. So it's no longer an environment where it's just a voice application and does your phone work, but it's driving enterprises to untether themselves within in-building environments and move in a direction of providing in-building or mission-critical applications in a mobile environment. And so that's where Zenwave comes in. That's what we do, right? So we are a very nice complement to what we've actually been talking about up until this point, which is that fiber infrastructure in the building. Well, we have a portfolio of solutions that leverages that fiber and brings that in-building mobile connectivity. So we're a global technology company. We provide technology solutions very focused on enterprise, specifically today or in today's environment, really targeting the CRE. We also included within that have a portfolio of public safety solutions that we support in that marketplace as well. And certainly we're excited about where the industry is. We think we've got a great opportunity in the market to move CREs to that next level and enable all that fiber infrastructure that's gonna allow them to create those capabilities in the market. We're gonna be able to support that and create that for mobility. So that's what Zenwave does, and that's what we're here to do.
Great. Well, let's skip over to Dennis. Dennis, talk a little bit about Solid.
Yeah, absolutely. So Solid is a global provider of RF amplifiers as well as optical solutions. So for a building like this, we may provide the edge, so the active antenna or the coverage for the wireless devices that you use. And on the optical side, what we provide is either the transport or the ability to take that valuable fiber and return some back or muck some so that you can get some dark fiber back and utilize it for additional solutions without having to go through the entire job of trenching or pulling new fiber, things like that. So Solid provides, again, not only the transport, but the edge, which is the coverage to the end user.
Okay, and I've got a slide up here. I think you've covered all the transit, public safety.
Yeah, we're
some of
very
the markets
active
you serve.
Absolutely, very active in the office space as well as the transportation, healthcare, and pretty much all the verticals.
Got it, thank you. Dennis, we don't have a slide, or Donnie, we don't have a slide for you, but I thought when you and I talked last week, it might be helpful for you to speak a little bit more about how your in-building enterprise group is different from Verizon's in-building neutral host group.
Sure, yeah, so I wasn't able to get anything through our PR system. This was last minute, right? This just happened this week. But yeah, so my team, we help manage the in-building process from when the initial request comes in to it being turned live. And this is where we do partnership with like ExteNet when that does improve the customer experience for turning things up. Like earlier when you're talking about backhaul, 120 days I would love to have as an average.
Yeah.
New York City, San Francisco, it's a year, right? So when a customer comes to us and they need an in-building solution, it's already too late. Right, so you guys and what you guys are talking about, getting ahead of things and having things pre-run and having the glass there ready, we would love to have that everywhere from our side. We know it's not there, but we're working with companies and we even have things internal we're doing to help get that there. But it's tough. It's tough to stay ahead, right, of this growth, especially within building, right? Because everything new coming up requires an in-building system. So it's a very active industry. I think what you guys are talking about is something that we need to address, I think, between the carriers and the companies that are working with the customers and the clients. We have solutions to help turn things up quicker that we've talked about with ExteNet, like the customer being able to provide their own internet, right? Like we said, it takes a year to get an internet circuit in Washington, D.C. or New York City or San Francisco. So why not allow us to use the customer's internet in the interim, right, as getting it up and getting them service as, because we all want the best thing for the client, right? So it's those kind of things that we're working on and the things that we're trying to turn up and get with interim. And I understand there's security concerns, right? But those are kind of the things that my team works on to help improve the process and the turn up times to get these things lit faster for the customer. And we do push our own products, right, with Verizon only. But we understand that there's a demand for neutral host. So we do those also, but it's got to be the right price per square foot and return on investment for us. So,
well, the reason we are here today with the launch of in-building technology, I mentioned earlier, it's really about closing the gap between the building owners, managers, and what I call the corporate real estate executives, and I think that term gets thrown around quite a bit. When I say CRE, I'm talking about the corporate real estate executives that are responsible for managing leased and owned space in high-rise buildings like this. And RCR Wireless News has been covering in-building DAS for 5 or 6 years. We write extensively about it virtually every single day. But when you talk to a corporate real estate executive who is responsible for facilities, they talk about the workplace. And I talked to a gentleman here in town named Ed Buckley, who's with CoreNet. He's actually with JLL, but he's on the board of CoreNet. And CoreNet is the Corporate Real Estate Executive Association. And Ed, he's responsible for facilities, okay? But what he talks about is what is the cost, total cost of leasing or owning real estate? That's one KPI he's measured by. The second KPI he's measured by is the utilization of his space. So if he's leasing or owns 1 million square feet, but only has enough employees to support 500,000 square feet, what does that mean? It means he's paying for a lot of real estate that he is not using. So again, this is a very specific need of a corporate real estate executive in the way we define CREs. The third metric he looks at is what does it cost to outfit a workplace for a employee, right? So what does it cost for the desk? What does it cost for the computer? What does it cost for the monitor? What does it cost for internet connection, PBX, voicemail, bring your own device? So that's another cost. And I know Ron Zimmer's going to talk about this in a little bit, that when you're a corporate real estate manager, what you pay in rent is only a fraction of the KPIs they're held accountable for. So the reason we're here today at In-Building Tech is to close this gap between the technology sellers, these guys, the people who manage the facilities, and I call those the CREs, and then you have building owners and managers. And so I'm curious, kind of go down the row here. I know, Scott, your team, you've got an enterprise team that's very focused on enterprise. What does enterprise mean, and what are you hearing from those corporate real estate executives who are actually paying rent in spaces? What are some of the needs that they have? And then we'll just kind of go down the row here, if you don't mind.
No. So from Zenwave's perspective, when I say enterprise, obviously traditional enterprise, we verticalize, right? You want to talk about hospitality, you want to talk about healthcare, you want to talk about traditional venues, airports, stadiums, those kinds of things. So that is one way that we look at the enterprise, and obviously we target and market into that enterprise. Where we are in terms, you're getting very specific with CRE. I'm not sure at Zenwave we're there yet, right? Because within our world, we're talking to REITs, we're talking to property management, we're talking to developers, right? We're talking to owners, and really where I think, in my experience is, as an industry, is we are, if you look backwards, historically that community, if you'll let me use that term, hasn't been, and I'm talking specifically about mobile environments, right? I'm not talking about the fiber infrastructure. That community has not been as concerned about that because, to my colleague here at the very right, they've just looked for Verizon or AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile to solve that problem, right? I mean, that's their problem. That's not mine. Well, that environment is rapidly changing, right? And that community that I just described is now embracing the concept that the operators the economics aren't there. They cannot afford to come build out every single building, right? It's just not there. So it's now about embracing that and realizing they need to take control of their environment, and we're really in a stage of education. Right? It's really understanding what's going on in their environment. It's understanding what are all the different technology choices, because there is never one single technology choice that's going to solve their problem. And so that's where we are. We're really in that knowledge transfer, that educational step. And so it's one where as I'm, whether I'm meeting one-on-one or I'm in these environments, I mean, I am encouraging that community of individuals to embrace the technology, understand the technology, because at the end of the day, the ones that do, they're going to increase rents, they're going to increase the value of their buildings, and they're going to be able to monetize that technology, right? We're going to very quickly be in an environment when you really think about technology where building owners that embrace that, and we talked earlier about pushing technology to the edge, right? The operators are doing that, building owners. You're going to be in a day where technology for building owners is going to become a revenue source. Using blockchain as an example, they're going to be able to deal with a Verizon and be able to sell the capacity inside that building for an interim period of time. And blockchain technology is going to be the monetary technology that's going to communicate between the two entities to deal with that monetization. So you got to think around, what are my choices today? How do I make those choices and position that the choices I make today also will be a good choice downstream? I think you used the term future-proof. That's a critical step. So, it's one of real education and understanding where it's going and what are the right technology choices to make. That's how I would describe that.
That's really good. I'll piggyback on the education piece because, whatever vertical we're in right now, whether it's hospitality, sports and entertainment, the Class A space, Class B space, every owner has whatever happened to them in the past. And that's shaped the way they think about this. I still run into real estate owners that go, I've got 4 walls and windows. That's what I do. Let the tenant deal with his problem. Okay? That's not a very innovative owner or property manager. And we've all seen them and said, maybe we can't help you right now. Mm-hmm. But the pain point's going to come when, why didn't Yelp rent my space? Why didn't Google rent my space? Why didn't, why don't I have the space where the couches and the millennials are sitting around using their devices and they are 50% vacant, okay, because they just didn't get it, all right? Then we deal with the strategic REIT owners that get it, and all they want to talk about is innovation. And the education point of it is they may not sign the deal with an ExteNet or a Zenwave yet because they think we aren't future-proofing their space. They're not confident that 10-year deal for a neutral host where Verizon's going to guarantee to be there for 10 years. What about this 5G thing happening in 2020? How do I know I'm going to get 5G? So the complicated discussion, the education with everything going on, it's very complex, which is why I go back to the adage of, you have to build a trust and a partnership. You have to have a consultative sale. Mm-hmm. It's not we're the experts, we're telling you what to do it or we're walking away. You do that, you're walking away. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thing that's really going on here. So from the time the iPhone came out in 2007, where everyone was shocked about what's happened, to where we are today, we have to listen. We really have to listen. So Ron's really good at what we've got from a pipe perspective. What we call it ExteNet Enterprise Comm Infrastructure is what he discussed with you, that fiber backbone and what it can do, what it can bring to you as a real estate owner of any type, whether you're a hotel, whether you're a commercial real estate, whether you're this many floors, or you're 300,000 square feet. It can provide capability that you need to fill your building or to provide capability for the tenants that are in your building. Yeah. The point is we are all adaptive to it. I know Donnie's working really hard on the enterprise piece, and the reason we kind of shook hands again and said hello is because we're all trying to figure out a way to get that RF source there as quick as possible. I will tell you the biggest pain point is still mobile connectivity. When we get a call, or he probably gets a call, the biggest question is, one, do you have money? And two, can you get me connectivity? And yeah, I could come in 2 weeks from now and build a network, but if I can't get him there, I can't get the RF source there, I can't get his backhaul there, right? Now I'm setting expectations that aren't something that's friendly with that real estate owner. So I can build a network in 60 days or 90 days, but if it takes a year, right? So we all have to work this together, and we have to recognize we're in parallel efforts here to try to solve that problem and make the owners, the property managers, the 2 chief engineers stop getting screamed at because the executive in the corner office cell phone doesn't work. Okay, that's what this is all about. And if we don't do it together and we don't educate, just like we're doing right now, it'll never happen.
Dennis, how about from Solid's standpoint, what are you seeing? I mean, maybe I'm trying to be too specific here, but are you starting to see the enterprise tenants in the building help drive deals?
Yeah, I think from Solid's perspective, and Bill hit on it, our job is to listen, right? So we have to listen to the tenant, we have to listen to the building owner, we have to listen to the trends that are going on, what their needs are. Try to listen not only what's going on today, but where they want to go or what they're looking at doing next. And by collecting that data and as a manufacturer, looking at ways to solve those problems utilizing our gear is one step of that listening process and learning process. But then we have to sit down with Verizon and ask them to get out their crystal ball and show us a little bit about where they want to go and how they're going to solve these problems and how their network can meet these ever-changing, ever-growing needs of the enterprise space. The tenants today are smarter than they used to be when it comes to what coverage means to them and how they need or how they want to use it. Because they're getting smarter, the demands of the building owner or the CRE are increasing. They expect everything to work. So if you picture, it's similar to the sundial pump from Sunoco or a soda fountain. They don't care what flavor they're asking for or what grade they're asking for. What they want is that infrastructure that they invested in yesterday to support today and tomorrow. And they don't want any interruption, they don't want any change. They expect it to be there and they expect the connectivity to work. And our job as an OEM is to listen to all that, put it together, develop a product that not only works today, but it was forward compatible or backward compatible in the future. So I think that's really the best way I can describe how we view the enterprise space today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot covered there. I would say the partnership is huge, right? Because at the end of the day, we can't build out the systems fast enough, and we don't have enough funds to build them out as we see the demand coming. That's where we need a partnership with Solid, ExteNet, right, and Zenwave to help get our systems deployed. It could be neutral host as, could be an individual in-building system. But on the other side of it, we are also meeting with the top enterprise customers almost on a regular basis about what is up and coming. Mm-hmm. Is it CBRS, private LTE, LTU, right, LAA, all of it, right? So they come to us and they say, listen, we want to prepare ourselves for the future. Where are we going to be at in 3 years? What do we need to do now so we can be ready for it, right? And that's where we do partnership, and we train and we help give guidance to all the companies up here, but also a bunch of other companies and to the customer themselves on what's coming to help prepare them, right, and have them make the right decision. We help guide them down that path, right? So sometimes we do make the decision for them. Other times we work with the customer, and then we'll work with ExteNet or Solid or Zenwave to come up with the proper solution to prepare the customer. So it's an active industry for sure, but that's kind of what I see happening with the enterprise from my side. I mean, it's a lot of conversation, and there's a lot of buzzwords out there about new things coming. So we constantly have to educate them and educate all the companies of where we're at, because we may not be on the same wavelength as Big Blue, right, or T-Mobile or Sprint, but we can tell you where we're at from our side that's publicly released for certain things, and that's where we do have usual meetings with enterprises and also with the companies we deal with around that. So
hey, let me praise Donna. He said something that he couldn't have said 2 or 3 years ago, which is looking for a temporary way to use somebody else's internet or untrusted source to connect a network.
Yeah.
2 years ago, you would have never heard a carrier say, everything is trusted connection, and I am only coming if you're on what I pick. So even though ExteNet has 300 plus miles in Manhattan of fiber that are going down every manhole cover, the carriers would not even think about getting on it because it has to be trusted. Right. Source for how to do it, which is why this backhaul takes what it is. So Donnie's one of the guys in his carrier, in the Verizon world, and others in AT&T are thinking it's unacceptable now. And he's changing the bureaucracy to go, the year's ridiculous. We've got to get capability out there, and we've got to find these solutions that are temporary while we get to what we need. Now, it's their RF spectrum, it's their security, it's a big network, and we get it on our end, but obviously we're encouraging guys like Donnie and what he's trying to do here.
Yeah, and our whole goal for my team is to improve the turn-up time of these systems. It takes way too long. The biggest complaint I get from enterprises is when I come to you, it takes you a year to deliver a solution. That's way too late, right? Mm-hmm. On the front side, we're working with these guys to get ahead of that curve with these buildings and whatnot, but on the flip side, this is where the public backhaul came into play, because that's one of our biggest leadways as a milestone is backhaul, So if we could get this interim solution, that's one of the things we came up with to try and shorten that time of turnup. So it's those kind of things, and you're going to see more and more products coming out that support public backhaul from our side too, right? So
you talk about enterprise calling you up. Just want to clarify, when they're calling you, they're saying, our phones don't connect and we don't have service? Is that what you're hearing?
well, there's many of different calls.
But
Yeah.
We all get those calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they call us and they want to have a fallback, right? They want Wi-Fi primary, they want our LTE service to be their fallback, or vice versa. So, it depends on the scenario. Some of them want more emergency response type of situations. What do we have that could quickly be deployed? We have different solutions out there. Or is it, yes, we have coverage solutions here in this issue in this building, right? Most of our, I would say, probably 90% of my projects are coverage-based,
Okay.
right? The other ones are really around things coming and enhancements and new buildings and whatnot. So,
Any of you others want to comment on maybe other scenarios or applications where it wasn't connectivity or coverage, but it was another application that drove an investment?
Yeah, let me, because Donnie, everything that he was talking about so far is kind of coverage, right? Is the mobile working, right? But it's really, I can't remember. Maybe it was Donnie that talked about it. We're clearly at a stage where enterprise is beginning to, I agree, reach a point of education where the questions they're asking are a lot more forward thinking, right? I mean, as you begin to look at, 5G and the message around 5G, right? It's creating that connectivity layer that ultimately is going to enable IoT, right? And the one thing that we've all got to recognize, because it can be easily forgotten, is that for any of the predictions around the economic benefit that anybody is projecting around IoT, if you don't have that robust connectivity layer in place, IoT will never achieve those predictions. And that's what we're doing collectively as an ecosystem, right? And so, enterprises are looking at alternatives that can support that environment, right? It's not only coverage, but we've talked earlier about the significant capacity, right? The increase in data. You talk about security. You talk about IoT's a very low latency or a low latency-driven technology, and when you're dealing with all that congestion, right? Wi-Fi is not an ideal solution to support that, right? Cellular LTE is clearly a better choice, and how do you enable the enterprise to be able to support that, right? And that's where private LTE, right? There's a lot of different technology choices that they're looking at. And so it's creating a suite of solutions for that enterprise segment in that consultative way that helps solve the problem for them.
Okay. We've all, maybe not everybody, but many in the industry have heard the term that connectivity should be the fourth utility. I'd like to throw it out to the group. What do you guys mean when you say connectivity should be the fourth utility in a building?
Look, it's pretty simple in my view. You got water, you got electricity, and now mobile connectivity or any kind of connectivity is at the same level. We still get into disagreements, and Jimmy knows of a one today, right? Where we have a real estate owner group that wants to be able to throw us out of the building if they sign our contract, if they sell the building. And no matter how many times I said, you would terminate us and kick us out, just like you would the water and the electric in your building. And so you have happy tenants that have mobile connectivity. We put in a few $1 million of infrastructure and all this, and yet you can't convince your investors to understand that your tenants are happy. And by the way, in this case, this owner was actually going to collect some revenue off it because we were doing other things with it. So you're actually throwing out a tenant. You're throwing a lease out. You're throwing revenue out. That's very old thinking, right? I mean, and sometimes you just can't get past it, and so the fourth utility, if you don't catch on to it, that it's as important as water, electric, or breathing, this thing. I mean, sadly, right? My boss contacts me at midnight. There he is, at midnight every night, just to make sure I have it in my hand, right? He contacts me. Then it's the fourth utility. It is what it is. So I'm sorry, but that's where we are, and that's probably the first education piece you have to do is to say, do you understand? They're walking into your building in the empty space on the 60th floor, and very likely the first thing they do is they go, "Oh, you don't have coverage here? I'm going next door."
To me, and again, I go to many of the same conferences many times a year as all of you, and we've been talking about this for 3 or 4 years now is, why aren't tenants coming in with RFPs that say I have to have 5 bars and 95% of the space, including stairwell and elevators? When is that going to start to happen?
Oh, well, no, the leases are coming in that says you'll have a DAS. They may not say the requirements of 90% or whatever
So
else you're
tenants
saying.
are starting to put
But
that in their request for proposal to the building
I
owner.
will tell you, we're building a building out right now that if that DAS is not done by December 31st, they have broken the lease with the tenant that's moving in. They signed up to that. So,
Yeah, I agree. We're seeing that across the industry. I mean, and just another example to that, right? We were working with a hospital system in the Midwest, and the hospital was recruiting a specific physician, and that specific physician stated that if you don't have a robust in-building solution in your hospital, I'm not coming.
that's power, baby.
That's power. So the market is moving in that direction. I think, certainly the clients that we're talking to are starting to see that kind of demand. And obviously that's what's driving, a lot of the demand that Donnie's seeing and all of us are seeing in the market in terms of, how do we create those solutions to meet that in-building coverage requirement.
Any other commentary? Anything else you're seeing in the market?
I would just say, as I mentioned before, the tenants are definitely smarter today. The connectivity is more important than it's ever been. The applications are used on every single device, no matter what it is. And I think what we really have to recognize is that in order to be the best possible property owner, you have to assume when that tenant walks in the door, they have to be able to assume that no matter what they're going to do, it's going to work and they're going to have that connectivity. And so going back to the fourth utility comment, really what I associate that with is it's a no-brainer. You almost don't even have to check it. The lights are going to come on, the water's going to run. You should know you have coverage. And as the tenants get smarter and as these applications get smarter, the networks need to get smart, not the network per se from the Verizon perspective, but from the DAS perspective or from the infrastructure perspective, they also have to get smarter and have to guarantee that building owner that tenant is going to get the overall experience that they need.
Got it.
I'll give you an example, a use case of, I've had this conversation at least 10 times. A very heavy occupied law firm kind of environment. And I'm not even bringing up this use case here because there's a lot of law firms in here. But the common is that lawyer who's charging $500 an hour to talk to whatever customer is in his car. He needs to be able to drive into that parking garage, not drop that call. He needs to be able to get out of his car and get in the elevator in the parking garage and not drop his call. He needs to be able to go up to the 22nd floor, get off that elevator, not drop his call, and get in his office and not drop his call. I've had that conversation, I'm telling you, at least 10 times with property owner. How are you going to make that happen? And then you talk the reality of what's going to cost and who's going to, expectation management of what we can do and what we can't do. But that's the way, that's a great example of how people want it to work like water and electric. But the reality is who's paying for this, right? And that kind of a robust system to do what we need to do.
We're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but I want to just see if there's any questions from the audience. Ben, do we have any online questions coming in for this particular panel? We do? Go ahead. They're kind of long. We'll try.
It's all right.
Are they really long? Yeah. All right. Well, we've got again. This is a live webinar, so we got folks in the room. We've also had over 450 people register to watch this program online. And typically, when we do a webinar, we're fielding the questions online. But what we'll do is we'll make sure the panelists get a list of the questions and can respond back to the online questions directly. But I want to close with a kind of quick comment down the line here. What, in your opinion, do you think that building owners, managers, and engineers have to know today about in-building wireless systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most critical thing is understand the technology choices that are out there, understand your environment, the needs of your environment, and make a technology choice that not only supports today's environment, but will support your environment 3, 5, and 7 years down the road, so that investment that you make is protected and it's future-proof. To me, that's the absolute critical decision to make.
Yep, I'll flip it the other way around. And what do sales guys need to ask real estate owners? What's your business case? What is your main concern? How do you do your operating expenses? How do you do your net operating income? Can you pass on any expenses through common area maintenance charges, CAM charges, or do you put it in an operating pool? How is it that it makes sense in a business model for you as the real estate owner or the property manager or whatever that creates the value so that your guest tenant experience is what you want it to be? If we're not asking that as sales folks, then we're going to miss the pain point. We're going to miss how they do their business. And we become those guys that are just throwing a brochure in front of their face and buy it or not. We can't be that way.
I think from our perspective, understanding the application, understanding the device it runs on, and what the need is for the end user, and then looking for a network that doesn't only solve that with one type of solution, that it can span between perhaps commercial cellular, Wi-Fi, and going forward 5G technology. So understanding the application, why it's important to the end user, and then being able to build one infrastructure that can support whatever network it needs to run on or can run on.
Yeah, so from my side, I think it's education, really back down to the building owners and between their clients, because we see a lot of delays of when building projects come up that once they get down to the lease agreement, there's a lot of negotiation and they don't quite understand what the client is needing, right? So back to the education, them understanding what the fourth utility is, right? I think would be key for us and help us, improve our time as far as turning up systems, So
one question I did have is, given it may take up to a year to design, install a system, coupled with the fact that you've got CBRS, 5G hanging out there, how do you future-proof a system today so that the client will make that investment today? That wasn't a trick, that's a real question.
Yeah.
I think of it as this way, is I usually say to a building owner, I don't want to harm your building more than once. And what I mean by that is, we're going to put a lot of holes in walls, so we're going to, put antennas up there and all those other things. I'd love to be able to put that whole passive infrastructure in. That is the future-proof part of it. The enough fiber, enough if it's fibered out to the antenna or if it's a certain, coax or whatever. We're going to use Cat 7, it depends on the technology. But that part of it is kind of future-proofed.
Yeah.
Then when the new technologies comes, it's literally going in telecom closets and head-in rooms and places that they don't care about that much. And we're changing out boxes for how to put the technology through the building. If we can kind of help a real estate owner see that, we're trying to be their partner for multiple years and not harm their building, I think that's a huge value.
I think the connection, the part that you can future, I'll stop short of proof, get future ready, is number one, the transport between point A where the carrier comes in or the Wi-Fi comes in and point B where it goes out to the end user. So by making sure your fiber connectivity, whatever you're doing there, is good. The second part is moving the active to a point where you can upgrade the actives, you can swap out the actives, you can be creative with what you have in this box going forward. So for example, 5G. Today, there's not, all the specs aren't settled for 5G, but you can build a platform that will allow you to add 5G when it's available, at some place that's remote, that's not intrusive to the end user or the building owner.
Well, this won't come as a surprise, but we will give the carrier the last word. So,
well, yeah, to a point, right? I mean, either way, the hardware will have to get swapped out at some point, right? Mm-hmm. You can't future-proof anything like you're saying. But from our side, like I said, the transport you could. So when customers come to us, we say fiber's the way, right? We know that's the way today, and that's the way of the future. What I can't tell them is the current radio they're throwing in, I ain't gonna have to replace in 3 years, because you may have to, depending on what technology and what service they need. So from our stance, fiber is the way to go. I mean, as far as future-proofing, but as far as the radios and the source nodes and that side of it, it's gonna be ever-changing in my opinion.
But the bottom, go ahead.
And Jeff, let me make one comment, because I do worry about this, because sometimes we can be a little bit of a victim of our own marketing efforts collectively as an industry, right? What I try to encourage in my one-on-ones is, listen, 5G is a term that's being thrown around a lot. And my fear, and in some of the conversations, is people are going, well, wait a second, to your point, 5G's coming, why do I want to make a decision today? I'll just wait for 5G. Well, the reality is that's not the right choice. LTE, 4G, 5G is going to coexist for years and years to come. Carrier aggregation, et cetera. There is going to be a coexistence. So the concept of waiting for 5G, I think, is the wrong choice, right? I think these guys have given examples of you got to make the right technology choice, right? But it is going to evolve over time, and you need to position your organization to take advantage of it over time.
So the bottom line is make the investment in the fiber, put the plumbing in, and you can switch out the antennas and such at a future time.
Well,
at least put the fiber into.
Agreed. And tell me what needs 5G right now, right? I mean, 4G and with this carrier
My kids and
speeds.
Netflix, I think. But
Yeah, I mean, the 5G is, I mean, once the standard's set, as we saw in 4G, it takes years before you actually see a valid product, right? And mobiles with that chip in them. So it's going to be the same thing with 5G, but, it is a bright future in 5G for sure.
Right.
So,
gentlemen, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Special thanks to our headlining sponsors, ExteNet, Zenwave, and Solid.